1995 was a weird time for Sega and their platforms. We all now know that this was the beginning of their inevitable drop out of the console race. At the time, they wanted to maintain the stellar image of the Genesis, a device that truly went balls to the walls in an attempt to challenge the Nintendo monopoly. Sega decided the fast-moving innovations of the time were not to be utilised in new consoles, but new peripherals. Sega fans of the time were blessed with the Sega CD and Sega 32X. Yes, certainly one way of increasing the console's longevity and potentially less of a gamble than creating a whole new console. But Sega didn't quite know how to balance it all. Lackluster lineups and pricey packages, and here we are, consoleless. Please, I think Sega need consoling. Okay. Very few games of notoriety were published for the 32X, unlike its disc jockey brethren, and when they were combined, well, the results are infamous by now. In the end, there was no breathing room before the Sega Saturn was released, so they became obsolete very quickly. As I already had the 32X and a flash card at my disposal, I felt it would be a waste if I didn't delve further into the library beyond Knuckles' Chaotix. So, this is what I managed to make of my month, learning to speedrun Tempo for the Sega 32X.
Yo, homie, peep here! Tempo, check it out, you know he makes it funky, and he's good to go when everything bang. Catch the move with New York, LA, and San Francisco.
Tempo's in the house tonight. You know he's gonna move your mind. The groove is out of sight. As funky as you wanna be. Tempo's in the house tonight. You know he's gonna move your mind. The groove is out of sight. As funky as you wanna be.
As for the Crisis Quota, the board for this game had been dormant for quite some time with no action in the past 3 years after 2 runners had worked on the game some while ago. But only at face value. After a quick check of the statistics, I found a massive, seemingly unaccounted for dip. This was from Papanda, a runner who had beaten the world record on emulator but was hidden by default on the leaderboard by the moderators. I can only assume this is because of 32X emulation being dodgy, but that's for another time completely. No guides, no resources, just 3 runs to help me through the game. Having reached out to Papanda and VA, I started working on the run. Innovative platformers and Sega hardware seemingly went hand in hand in those days, so when an anthropomorphic hedgehog is stealing headlines, what do you do to stand out? I know people were employed for this, but I'm sure you lot can think of something. Well, for Tempo, they decided to make their protagonist an anthropomorphic grasshopper. Sega and Red Entertainment really pulled out stops for this one. As for the story and structure, it gets a little more inspired. We follow Tempo and every so often his friend Katie starring on the Major Minor Show, a game show with 7 different performances based on different locations. Escape from the City, Hi-Fi I Wanna Die, Vor,
I'm going to clown college!
Jungle Music, Michael Bublé's Return, and Final Performance. We maneuver through these levels with our sprinting, jumps, leaps, kicks, gliding, this weird thing where we shoot a musical note from our fingers, and sometimes a combination of all these things. Our health bar is damaged by enemies and some natural elements, but is refueled by music notes. Every so often we find these dance panels, and in boss battles what I presume is the show's host power-ups, which bring Katie in. Now instead of kicking and jumping on top of bosses and enemies, we can shock them and Katie can do the dirty work. Now comparing this to other games released around this time and their corresponding speedruns, I was quite fortunate. This game is effectively a glitchless experience. The strategies I found myself using were just smooth button combinations to gain some good height. In fact, you know what? I can talk about the glitches in a little segment right now. The first glitch allows you to use ladders more like elevators. If we snap jump into a ladder tube thing, I don't know what they were going for with this, we could zoom right to the top. When compared to taking these normally, you can save 1 to 2 seconds, so fairly mundane but nice to play with. Now for that other glitch. Although present on the console world record, the true world record doesn't feature this, the floor drill. Fairly self-explanatory and licks even more whack on tool-assisted speedruns, understandably, but the most practical application comes in Jungle Performance. The general route is effectively a loop and we start the level right above the exit. To skip this, we jump till the apex of this jumping animation and try and make tiny movements left and right to keep this pencil dive. If done well, we just slide through the cracks and skip having to do this level in a more linear fashion. Pause buffering is well and truly your friend in this case, as any left or right movement wants to be a very few frames. But moving away from the glitches and focusing on the rest of the game, it's sweet. I will admit, it took me a little time to move from momentum-based platforming to this more tight, stiff gameplay. The techniques to go fast came quite naturally after sitting with the game for a good amount of time. I must admit, although this game probably doesn't push the 32x's abilities to the max, and probably doesn't even need the device at all, it's absolutely bussin'. The levels look so lively, if not a little confusing with what is in the foreground and background. You ever stand up too quickly? Yeah, this is that. The enemy placement is fair, and every level has a few items and gimmicks that'll make you smile when you pick them up. Yep, this is a disc that rains cows, plays a yodeling track, and changes the background to the Alps. Finally! This is what was missing in Sonic games. All of the animations are super smooth, with the animators going so far as to add smear frames in the character movements. We can put this down to the animators, but we can't forget, and I shit you not, a choreographer came in to work on this game to ensure every little dance was fresh. With these things considered, the game is pleasing to the eye, easy to approach, rewarding to master, and it's just overall quite charming. I think it's worth mentioning that for all the emphasis that is placed on music with the major-minor show and tempo and these headphones everywhere, the music is alright. A few bangers, but a whole lot of repetition. Tracks do get better when Katie's around, but in a speedrun she generally only joins in during the bosses. This leads us on to the thing that I cannot stand about this run. So, the bosses. Now one thing I should mention is that you can't spell bosses without a whole load of B and S. This principle carries over to this game, with the enemies we find at the end of each level. Once you get a knack for the first two, it's all fun and games, but as soon as you have the boxing glove, dude, it is a literal punch in the guts. This guy randomly despawns and reappears, you can't tell when he's going to punch you again, and he can take you down in 3 hits. Oh, did I mention that all of this run isn't easy? I didn't catch this memo when I started running and could not complete a single run. By all means, play through this game casually. I wish you good luck, because you will need it for the RNG in this boss alone. Okay, come on, compose yourself. So Sucker Punch is done. After him we have... it gets worse. This... I don't even know what this wizard clown looking ass is trying to be. In the fight it can be manipulated, but can also lay you down very easily, and when he does, it's over. Every time you die on a boss fight after the first 3 levels, the choreographer goes to town as the bosses gallivant on top of your dead body. One death from him makes you feel like the run's a dumpster fire, and despite the sharp increase in difficulty up to that point, after that boss, the game's difficulty takes a huge dip. Jungle performance is easy with both the skip and linear playing of the game, Cardi B is easy to take down, and winter performance is just a really nice refresh before the final performance. And when it comes to that, just memorise the doors, kick the boss a couple of times, and woohoo, you did it. GG's. Oh, don't die to the final boss. His taunt goes on for, peep this one, 25 seconds. In fact, I'm going to play it to you. Look at how degrading this is, and imagine being on PB pace and he busts these moves. But in the end, you shouldn't be dying to this boss, and that's the game. Tempo and Katie have just had the most grueling challenge of their lives. They've beaten the Major Minor Show. What is their prize? Well, unless you fixed Red Entertainment's lazy programming, you're going to be getting pants, and as a result, an extremely intimidating credit sequence. Ooh, tempo. Alright. A prototype had enemies give you more points for the final total, but were obviously not balanced for the final release of the game, and the only way to get the ultimate prize, a whole damn house, is to use continue abuse and play the final level for about 6 hours. Thank you, TCRF. Very cool. In summary, speedrunning this game is not hard. To compete with the top times is. There will be moments where the collision is not on your side, and when the bosses aren't either, it will be rough. Although I knew my runs weren't incredible, every time I finished one there was just satisfaction in the knowledge I completed the game. 22-20. Yes, we break the 23 barrier. So how does it fare in my ratings? If you want to go rogue and find all the tools on the net, this game is easy to get a hold of. Emulation isn't perfect, but input lag isn't too much of an issue with the tricks in this game. If you want to play it pure, you're going to have to sink some money into it. If it weren't for the heaps of RNG you depend on, this game would be an absolute joy to play. As a result of the bosses, it becomes a real task completing runs. Certainly not marathon safe. finishing a good run is extremely rewarding. Pulling off jump combos in the Reb quick boss kill is gratifying as all hell. With the month I had with Tempo, I had 59 attempts, 6 finish runs, nearly 7 minutes saved from my first personal best, 11 runs dying to these two bastards, and the third, technically fourth, place finish on the leaderboards. Hib says, give it a chance. I hope you've enjoyed this mini speed review thing. Just thought I'd add this audio footage saying that this is the first of a 12-game event I'm doing this year raising money for Crisis. I'm learning a new game every month that has a board in a Crisis. This could be because of a lack of active runners, no known speedrun / leaderboard, less than 10 runs of the board, or a game that has seen a significant dip in runners. These lovely people have donated and have as a result seen my weird stream setup and dyed my hair blue. There are more incentives that are live, so if you fancy seeing me do silly things in the name of charity, feel free to follow the link in the bio to donate. And I mean, whilst you're there, check out my streams. I aim to do a Crisis stream every weekend, and in the meantime play other, usually Knuckles related games too. Oh, and if you fancy catching my PB for Tempo, go give it a look-see here. Thank you for watching, and keep up the tempo.